So the guy that wrote the Star Spangled Banner is actually a white supremacist and a slave owner. So I'm going to give you a little history lesson. So his name was Francis Scott Key. We all know him as the man that wrote the Star Spangled Banner. What they leave out is who he is. So he comes from a very wealthy family in Maryland. He became well known as a lawyer and later served as the U.S. District Attorney for Washington, D.C. As a prosecutor, he used his power to target abolitionists, people who were speaking out against slavery. One of the most famous examples was his case against Reuben Crandall. Crandall was a doctor from a very reform-minded family. They moved from Washington to practice medicine. In 1835, he was accused of possessing and sharing anti-slavery literature. I want to say the story goes something along the lines of like a black man asked him for something to read. Crandall's brother gave him a bunch of anti-slavery literature, and Crandall gave it to this black man. And for context, it wasn't just like one book. It was pamphlets, newspapers, anti-slavery publications, materials associated with the American Anti-Slavery Society. So the case becomes huge because they claimed this white guy giving this black guy these writings could inspire rebellion. So this white mob attacks Crandall. They send him to jail. Key prosecutes him for seditious libel, which is like publishing or speaking material that's like intended to criticize, disgrace, or incite contempt against the government. So they were basically trying to criminalize anti-slavery ideas. During that case, Francis Scott Key described free black people as a distinct and inferior race of people. That's a direct quote. He also argued that black people were the greatest evil that afflicts a community. Another direct quote. In the end, Crandall gets acquitted. The jury rejects the charges, but he spent months imprisoned. His health declined, his career was ruined, and he ended up dying very young after the ordeal. Francis Scott Key ends up writing a poem that becomes the Star Spangled Banner during the War of 1812. I want to say it was during like September 1814. He's on a British ship negotiating the release of an American prisoner. He heard the British military plans, so he was temporarily kept from leaving while the British attacked Fort McHenry in Baltimore. So he watches the overnight bombardment from the harbor. The next morning comes and he sees the American flag was still flying over the fort, meaning that the British had not taken it. His sight of the flag inspired him to write the poem, originally called The Defense of Fort McHenry. The poem gets printed all over the newspapers, and they set it to the tune of a popular British melody called To Anacreon in Heaven. Over time, it ends up being used as like a patriotic song, and it gets adopted as our national anthem in the 1930s. Meaning, the national anthem was born from military battle. It's not about your freedom. It's not about equality. At the same time, America celebrated resisting Britain, millions of people in the United States were still enslaved. They only teach you the first verse. They don't teach you the third, where the guy that wrote it appears to be mocking people escaping slavery. Because in the third verse, so here's the historical context. During the War of 1812, the British offered freedom to some enslaved people who escaped and joined their side. So thousands of people took that chance. So then in the third verse of the national anthem, he wrote, "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave." Many historians kind of debate the exact wording, but general interpretation is that it refers to enslaved black people who escaped to the British side. Meaning the anthem that people are told to honor may contain a verse celebrating the defeat of people trying to free themselves. They taught you the sing-along version, but they skip the history that kind of poses the harder questions, and I think it's disgusting.